All right, so we'll go ahead and get started here. If you join late, the website is always going to be at the top here that you can join with that, so you don't have to scan this thing. So start with the same thing right now. All in all, and everything going on, what are the 3 things you most need help with? Class, clinicals, love life. I have no help in your love life, but what's going on in your world?
I don't have enough room.
You can submit more than, or you can submit more than once, so you can submit one at a time. VOC prep, yeah, hear that. That's definitely a looming thing over everyone's head, I'm sure. What else is going on? The good thing about VOC prep at this point is we still do have a lot of time and a lot of organized activities for you. So even though right now it feels like you're on your own a little bit.
Oh, it didn't go in order. That's sad. Supposed to say just 2 hours a day so I can stay sane.
Oh yeah, a little bit of time by yourself, balancing that. That is a very specific thing. But the good thing is on those notes, we are pretty much done with the heavy lifting of the semester project as far as the time. The rest of the semester project activities are done like with patients or individually. So hopefully that will allow you some more overlap time between your clinic work and your class here. So hopefully the specific craziness of this class should slow down now, because you've got all your worksheets done now, so that should help.
I have a question.
Yep.
So the next couple days, can I not get docked points for turning things in late?
Sure.
Because I have to work until 10.
That's fine. What is due these next couple of days? Oh, just your patient thing?
I don't even know. I haven't looked.
Yeah, you have your we'll talk about that in a sec. So these last worksheets that you did, how did you feel as far as your confidence in understanding the material? Go ahead and rate those for me. So yeah, so looking at these are some more specific sort of stuff, especially when we get into these plan of care aspects towards the end. I would expect those to be a little bit lower. We'll continue to work on some of those, but the book and the worksheets are a lot more specific than you necessarily always have to be. The main thing when you get into these components there is documenting well what you do. Right. Some of these, specific things with, plans of care and review of symptoms are just not, or review of systems are not things that you're going to be routinely doing. So may not be required in every evaluation. So it's perfectly acceptable to exclude some of those things in your normal evaluation. So it makes sense that these are a little bit lower than some. So before we get into the questions for these lessons, what sort of questions do you have from video lessons 2 through 5? Anyone have anything specific? Questions? All right, then we'll move on, and as always, we'll come back to that for questions. So, first question here, right? Given the situation below as the most important component for your PCOT question or PICO question, you're treating an athlete that is 6 weeks out from a patellar tendon ACL reconstruction, and you're investigating range of motion treatment options. So of your PICO question, which of these would be most important, do you think? One for intervention, looks like one for outcome, one for comparison. Another one for outcome. All right. In this case, it's actually patient population.
Why?
So when you look at these, right? So let's read through this. Right. So you are treating an athlete that is 6 weeks out from a patellar tendon graft ACL reconstruction, and you are investigating range of motion treatment options, right? So outcome, right, would probably be second in this case, because we're most interested in increasing range of motion, right? Comparison and intervention are important, but we're open to a variety of different options, right? We're investigating range of motion treatment options. So we're not really as worried about what specific or what specific interventions they used in this situation. We're most interested in outcome, but since our patient fits a very specific patient population, that's what's most important. We need these interventions to be done on ACL patellar tendon graft people, because the interventions that you use are going to be very different in this case based off of the patient population. If we're trying to improve, knee extension, so to speak, with that, that's going to be very different in ACL injuries from hamstring injuries, and it's even going to be different between those. So since we have a very specific patient population, when we're evaluating the research, it's most important that the research we're reading is done on people within our patient population. Questions on that? Next, if you're trying to create a prevention plan for ACL tears, what type or types of PCOT questions would you need to ask? Got 2 for etiology, 1 for intervention, and 1 for prognosis. Right? And it can be either an intervention or therapy or an etiology question. Right? Prognosis would be in there as well, but good, we don't have anybody with diagnosis or meaning. Right? These are different types of PCOT questions or PICO question. The only difference between, like in this textbook, they add T for time. I usually just include time in the outcome because it's relatively not that important. But when we're looking at prevention plan, right, we need questions that would ask what are the most common causes for these injuries, right, which would be etiology. And then what sort of intervention might be effective for preventing ACL tears. And you can get into prognosis as far as what would we believe would be the suspected outcome for an intervention. So prognosis would just be one that more focused on the outcome of this intervention. You are in a hurry and need an answer in the next day. How can you speed up your search process? Use controlled vocabulary, use Boolean operators, exploding and truncation, or filters. Two for controlled vocabulary, 1 for filters right now. Another 1 for controlled vocabulary. So before we show the answer, let's go through what these are. Anyone remember what is controlled vocabulary? Anyone? You remember? Or is this guesses?
Does it deal with medical terminology?
Yeah, it's so with those controlled vocabulary, there are those mesh terms, right? The specific terms that they've used to identify different aspects with that. So that's mesh terms. What's Boolean operators?
Like when you use like the and or.
Yep, the and or ors. Exploiting and truncation are the when you use like asterisks or whatever, so you only use part of the word, and then you would do an asterisk, which would then include anything from there. So that's, we use the example of like tendon, right, and then exploding for tendinitis, tendinopathy, tendon injury, all that sort of stuff. Okay. And then filters. What are the filters? Filters are things like, filtering by article type or publication date, or in this case, full text, right? If you're in a hurry, that is the purpose for full text, right? I need an answer in the next day. I don't have time for interlibrary loans or different aspects with that. So since I'm in a hurry, that would be a good time to use the filter of like full text. Controlled vocabulary does help, and all of these others help get the best articles. But since in this one we're in a hurry, we'd go to use filters. Right? You have a very interesting case that you have never seen before, and there is no research on it. What type of study could you do in this situation? Fairly evenly split here. Who's going to be the tiebreaker? Okay, so let's go through these types of articles then, right? Nobody picked compilation, right, which is good. Compilation are what type of articles? Do you remember?
Systematic and meta-analysis.
Systematic reviews, meta-analysis. That makes sense. Qualitative, or we'll go through here, or go just backwards here. Qualitative with two answers. These are, more open-ended interview type research articles. Evaluative articles are your normal articles that you normally think of, and descriptive articles are case studies and case reviews. So the answer here is descriptive. Why? Because this is a very unique case. If I only have one person that I've ever seen this for, I obviously can't, do compilation unless other people have seen a lot of it. Can't do qualitative very well, because the idea with qualitative research is we need to do a lot, or do enough interviews till we see consistency in the data. It's very difficult to do an evaluative article because there's nobody to compare it to. So this is where descriptive studies are at their best, right? To describe rare, unique cases that we don't have enough cases of to do higher level reviews, but we still want to get the information out there so that way others can grow from our experiences as well, both positive and negative. Does that make sense there as far as the different types of studies? open-ended question here. What research design is considered the highest level of evidence? Got qualitative, randomized experiments, meta-analysis, we're all in there, right? And the answer really on this one is it depends, right? It depends. There is a basic structure, and so of all of these, right, probably meta-analysis, qualitative are higher. Randomized experiments are the standard, but if we have meta-analyses of randomized, that's higher with this. But in this book, which I really like, is it expands upon the normal hierarchy of evidence to include the fact that for different types of questions, there are limitations on the ability to do research on there. So like we talk about how, randomized control trials are the best, right? And then obviously compilation go above that. But randomized control trials are the best, but there are certain situations where it's not possible. So cohort studies are the best that we could do in that situation. So opposed to saying that cohort studies for those situations are a lower level of evidence, it promotes those to the highest level of evidence in that situation. And so you can go through and look then at the different things, whether it's diagnostics, right? In which case, like cohort studies are the best because you cannot randomly assign people to be injured or not injured, right? So that's the highest level. So understanding both the different levels of evidence as well as the different types are important. And there's a chart in your book about that as well. All right, you have a patient that you want to try a new intervention with. When reading through the literature, what statistic will be most valuable to you? Got a couple for confidence interval, one for p-value with there. So let's go through what all of these mean then before we see the correct answer. Standard deviation, right, is a measure of the consistency of the data. All right, so you have the mean, which is the average, and then the standard deviation is how many people fall, or it's the 66, 99 basically, or whatever percent fall within one standard deviation and two standard deviations from there. It's the normal reported data, and you see that always reported as the mean plus or minus, and then the next number is the standard deviation. The range is the total deviation throughout the entire population from high to low with that. The confidence interval then is the statistic that combines both the mean and standard deviation to try to identify the actual mean, meaning that like the mean has some error rate in it, right? Because of deviations with that. And so the confidence interval then says that the average, the real number is going to fall between these two ranges in there. So in this case, when we're looking at this new intervention, right, the final number, the final outcome of that intervention would fall within these categories. P-value then is the statistic that assesses for type 1, the risk of type 1 and type 2 error, usually set at 0.05, right, to say whether or not there's a statistical difference. And then effect size is the proportional difference, right? And proportional isn't, I'm not using that in a statistical standpoint, but in a more like loose definition between the different groups in there. And that measures the difference or the clinical utility of the difference. And so in this case, it is going to be effect size. And so effect size takes now the difference between the two groups and standardizes it for clinical utility. So confidence interval will tell us where the actual mean is for this. P-value will tell us, whether or not there's a statistical difference. But we're really looking for that effect size because we want an intervention with a high effect size. So confidence interval and p-value are best for telling us whether there's a statistical difference between those. But we don't really care specifically within intervention whether or not there's a statistical difference. We care whether or not that new intervention will actually lead to much better outcomes with our patients than the comparison. All right. And so I use the example of, you can find a statistical difference between, like, say, stretching interventions. And if you have a stretching intervention and you test, 1,000 people, even like a 2-degree difference in range of motion would be a statistically significant difference. And so we would see that with a low p-value because it's statistically different between those two groups. The confidence interval would be narrow. Right? We would be fairly comfortable with this idea that they fell within this and they would not overlap. But when we get to the effect size in an intervention where there was only 2 degrees of difference, say like in shoulder range of motion, 2 out of 180 plus degree range of motion does not matter, right? We don't really care with that. It wouldn't be worth doing the intervention. And so there's where effect size come into play. So does the idea of effect size make more sense now?
A little bit.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. You're reading a research report. You notice that there are few participants and therefore low statistical power. What type of error might there be? Type 1 or type 2? All right, so let's go through this now. Type 1 errors are errors in which you fail to reject a true null hypothesis, right? That's the stupid definition with there. In reality, when we get to these sort of situations there, we need to think of a type 1 error is when we say there is a difference and there isn't. Most stats, most research designs are designed to decrease type 1 error. Type 2 error is when we accept a null hypothesis that is false. A null hypothesis meaning that there is no difference. That's what we're testing when we're doing statistics. Our null hypothesis basically saying that the two groups are the same. And so if we have low number of participants and low statistical power, what that means by definition is we have low ability to reject the null hypothesis. And so that's a type 2 error with that. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Kinda. You read a large study with a lot of participants and it concludes that there's a significant difference between groups. What should you do next? Blitz, stop eating the wall. Stop.
Who's eating the wall?
Okay. So when we look at this, right, we've got now this study with it's a study with a lot of participants and concludes there's a significant difference. Okay, so with a lot of participants with that, this is now the opposite situation, that we had before, right? So in this case, we have a lot of significant or a lot of statistical power with that. So when we have lots of statistical powers, we have a lot of controls with this. So a lot of these different aspects as far as, concern about the groups and what caused the difference should be answered in there. The bigger concern then is the difference between statistical significance and clinical significance. So next we need to establish clinical significance, right? And we use effect size and the population to do that. And we will talk more about doing that in the future. But once we move from, we need to start thinking as we're reviewing research that we not only need to evaluate for statistical significance and the probability of type 1 errors, but the effect size and the possibility of type 2 errors, and not only being type 2 errors from the standpoint of accepting of a null hypothesis that is false, but also the idea of that type 2 applicability type aspects, wherein those type 2 errors come into there, that we have the possibility of using some of this information, even though the statistics are not there. And so those are the questions that I had. You can either submit, if you still have questions from these lessons, you can submit them here, or you can just ask them, are there any questions about this material that you still have?
Like over the videos?
Yeah, that we've watched previously, and this sort of stuff that we just talked about. These questions that come from those video lessons, the same material. They're a little bit higher level than probably some of the test questions, like instead of just asking you what the definition is with that, like I kind of took it a little farther this time with their, but since the purpose of these sessions are to help not only to answer questions, but also to prepare for the exam that is in a little bit of time. I think it's next week, but
We have a test next week.
we only got like 2 more weeks of the class.
And if we all fail it again?
We're not going to all fail it again. I decided it's not acceptable. Let's see, when is the test?
Is it like cumulative over like all the different books, or what is it? Just the video lessons?
Yes, it is the video lessons.
Can you do like a study guide so that we know what's going to be on the test? Just so that we have an idea.
Besides the information from the videos and the, yeah, I can try. Yeah, the first exam is a week from today.
What
So
time?
yeah, I'll try to put something together. A lot of it's just going to be going through and, a lot of it's vocab type stuff.
You and your dang vocab, James.
Well, you got to know the terms. Okay, not seeing any questions there. Move on to looking at our semester project. We've got 2 assignments within the semester project. Coming up are our patients. So we've got outcome measures and the initial note. How comfortable are you in your knowledge and your ability to do these things?
Are these like the ones that we have to do?
These are the ones coming up. So looking at this then, let's talk about this for a minute. So what the assignment is here is you have basically an initial note to do. So you're going to select a patient that you have worked with in the past or are currently working with, right? And you are going to do an initial note. So an initial SOAP note, which basically goes through those different components that we talked about, the subjective, including the review of symptoms in the history. So you write it up for them, you do your objective, you do your assessment, you do your plan of care, right? Using that same format as you've been doing in the assignments, collecting the same sort of information with that, and then writing it up. I also asked for you to include within there a patient-rated outcome measure. So you need to select and then describe why you selected a patient-rated outcome measure, right? And those are those, if you remember way back to treatment techniques, when we talked about like outcome measures, and these are survey type measures, right, where the patient fills out the survey and evaluates their current level of functioning. And then you will have them fill that out again in the future when we do our final note, and you will be able to compare their progress over time. All right. So Jensen, if you have a patient that you've been working with, maybe we can try to FaceTime you in with them, or, something with there, or one of your classmates can kind of help collect some of that sort of stuff, or we can wait and do this later as well when you get back. But the idea now is to take what you've learned from your documentation worksheets and do a full high level, PT style, if you want to go that way, but I would just call it a true healthcare SOAP note for this patient. Okay, so if you can't do the initial note right away, right, that's okay, because you can do that maybe at another time. But because we only have a short amount of time during this course, I at least want you to make sure you get the patient outcome measure selected and filled out on time, right? Because that way you will have more time to see any potential change. So any questions about the semester project now? Are people voting thumbs up and thumbs down on the semester project? I know that was a crazy thing, but I promise it will pay dividends in the long term that you went through and did that. And I wanted to force you guys through that quickly. So now you will have more time to focus on preparing for the exams as well, right? I knew that if I spread out those worksheets, not only would it give us less time to do it in real life, but it would also make it so that we were balancing worksheets with studying for exams. Yes.
Are we going to be tested at all over Kettenbach?
No.
Okay.
The test was the worksheets and the semester project. There is no test.
Those worksheets were hell, James.
Yep. I completely agree, but we are through and none of us are dead.
I'm like
Close.
98% sure I did none of them correctly.
Well, you at least looked at them. And that was half of it. Right? You at least now know, at minimum, you at least now know that there's more work for you to do in the future of documentation if you ever need it. You at least now know that there are resources out there. If in case it's your first job, they go through and they ask for you, or you turn in your first evaluation, they go, this is not acceptable. We need a lot more documentation. You at least now know that there are resources and thoughts opposed to go, oh crap, I have no idea what I'm doing. More than likely, for a lot of you, you will get in your first job. And if you document at all, they will be happy. But I wanted to make sure we all at least knew and had an appreciation for what true medical documentation was. Whether we know how to do it in particular, I have no belief that we would be able to figure that out in a week or two's worth of time. It takes a lot more time, similar to other skills. But I wanted to introduce it to you in case you need it. That is something now you can practice in the future.
All right, apparently you need to wake up.
Dude, I got like 6 alarms going off right now.
All right. Okay. Last one. What questions, complaints? What can I do for you guys before classes, or before we call it a day?
Push me off a bridge.
See, like, I understand that sentiment, but if I pushed you off the bridge, then everything you just did was for no reason. In reality, what I need to do is
So I'd
get
get to
you.
sleep, James. I would get to sleep for a very long time.
Yeah, but if I get you to graduation and get you a job, then you can sleep with money.
No,
Fair.
no.
Right?
no.
But at this point, we don't even have time to apply to jobs.
Well, we will get there as well. But this is my goal for all of you, is to get you good jobs based off of your great experience. So that way you make more than your current jobs that you're doing. And hopefully a little bit more fun. So I completely know the hell of grad school sort of stuff. I wish I could make it better for you, but I don't want to make it better for you in exchange for making you not as prepared as you can to get the real payday, which is a job. So I feel for you, but I'm not going to do anything about it except for try to help.
I appreciate you for pushing us to be better people, James.
I know I'm an asshole, but that's why I build these strong relationships with you. So that way, when I am a complete ass, you don't hate me personally, you hate my class. And we can all agree that we hate this class, right?
I'm glad you agree too, James.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a lot of work. It's less work for me than it is for you, because I at least get to redo some of it and reuse it time after time. But look at all the crap that we have to go through.
Yep.
And on the positive note, hopefully with the videos, I mean, this is where I want to encourage you to go through. Use your resources for this class when we get to the exams, right? If you are somebody that likes to talk through things, then use these times where we have questions to talk through the material. If you are somebody, and I don't think we have anybody in this class, that really learns best through reading, you have course readings. If you learn best by listening to somebody talk about it, watch the video lessons. If you learn best through questions and quizzing, there are questions, go back and look at this later with the questions and quizzing in different aspects with that. There are lots of resources available for you to hopefully match your learning style. Do not feel obligated to spend the same amount of time in each learning activity. If you see the reading and the video lessons and these synchronous sessions basically are on your to-do list, but all you have to do is click done to get them off your to-do list, right? You say that you've completed them, right? You should make sure that you do some of all of them, right? You should not just completely not read anything. You should not watch the videos, right? But this is the great thing about videos, right? If videos aren't that helpful for you with that, turn up the speed a little bit, right? So that way you're kind of getting just the main points. You can skip around with that. If reading you don't get a lot out of, then just skim through it, right? Don't spend as much time reading. Hopefully there is a way within this class for you to get the material in a way that best fits you. All right. I will work on getting a study guide, but to be honest, basically the study guide will be a list of the vocabulary terms out of each textbook. That's, 90% of it, right? Because if you know the definition and you know how to apply that in a situation, you know evidence-based practice. All right. Anything else I can do for you all? Well, as they say, have a great day, have a good night, and go Browns.
Yeah.
See ya.
So since you said that just looking at the assignment is half the work, can I get more points back?
Don't worry about the
I just don't want to bomb the test and then fail the class.
You're not going to fail